Remember last night we talked about the Attorney General in Florida, Ashley Moody, issued subpoenas to the college football playoff, wants all this information, wants to know, who voted for what, records of all the votes, notes passed between the members of the selection committee, communication between the committee and ESPN, communication between the committee and different conference leaders. You're not going to get any of that because most of that stuff doesn't exist. There's a reason that they have those people meet in person in Grapevine, Texas. So they don't keep records of those things. It's not like a vote on the House floor. It's not a roll call vote where you just go to each person, they say yay or nay, or I think this team should be number 2. It doesn't work that way. They basically talk about it and they say, are we good with this team at number 3? Yes. Okay, great. Moving on. That's how it works. They're not taking written ballots, and they're certainly not putting their names to them. So I don't think they're going to succeed in that. But there is something they can do. And that's the thing that I'm wondering if the Florida politicians really want to do something, or do they just want to cry out for attention? Because if they're just crying out for attention, that's fine, but they're not going to get anything they actually want. They're trying to wage a PR battle in a situation where I don't think more than half the population is ever going to be on their side relative to Florida State getting in. Because I think most of the college football watching population is indifferent to whether Alabama or Florida State made the 14 playoff. And I don't think even half the college football watching population of Florida is necessarily going to be sympathetic to Florida State, because there are fans of Florida, fans of Miami, fans of other schools. Like the Florida fans probably going to side with the SEC team in this case. So that's not going to help you. But if you want to get after the commissioners who run the college football playoff for the exclusion of Florida State, if you want to fight back, there's a way to do it. So I called a guy named Corey Santacia. Corey is uniquely qualified to understand this situation. So Corey was the chief of staff for a Florida State representative named Chip LaMarca, who was the guy who pushed the NIL bill through in the state of Florida. He spearheaded it, and he was also the one, he and Corey were the ones who put the 2021 effective date on it. So that essentially ushered in the NIL era. California passed the first bill, but it wasn't going into effect until 2023. When Florida passed a bill that went into effect in 2021, everybody else followed suit. And so that ushers in the NIL era. So Corey has gone on to become a lobbyist, but he also has a side job. He's the director of the Fowler Avenue Collective. That's the collective that services USF. So he understands NIL very, very well, and he understands Florida politics very, very well. And I asked him, if you were advising the legislators in the state of Florida, or the governor, or the attorney general, or any of these people who are speaking out saying FSU was robbed, saying something must be done, what would you do? How would you do it? And he came up with a really interesting idea. So after this, if you're listening live to this episode, if you're watching this episode live, the column's not out yet. It will be out when this episode is done. And if you're listening in podcast form, if you are watching a little bit later on, it's already out. So you can go to On3 and you can read this column. I lay it all out there. Corey walked me through it, and it's fascinating. It's fascinating. This is what he would do. There are a couple ways to do it, but this is one of them is probably more painful for the commissioners than the other. What they do is you have the Florida legislature, House, Senate, you can start it wherever you want to, but you got to pass it through both houses and get the governor to sign it. Pass a bill that makes it illegal for the NCAA to make a rule forbidding bowl games from paying players. So essentially, you would allow the bowl games in the state of Florida to pay players to play in them. This is something that the bowl games in Florida would absolutely do if they were allowed to do it. So you've got your Pop-Tarts Bowl NC State and Kansas State. They got the edible Pop-Tarts mascot. Sounds awesome. It really does. You know what sounds more awesome? If you pay me to play in it. They would probably do that. The Gasparilla Bowl, the Gator Bowl, the Citrus Bowl, which is sponsored by Cheez-It. You got star players from Tennessee or Iowa that want to sit out. You go, hey, listen, here's a nice 5-figure bonus. All you have to do at some point during the week is just walk up to a microphone and go, I woke up feeling the cheesiest, coach. That's all you got to do. 5-figure bonus, play in the game. Most of them would play. Unless you're going to be a first-round pick, you're probably going to play for that. The big one, though, is the Orange Bowl. Because the Orange Bowl, starting next year, is a playoff game every year. Now, we don't know how long it will be a playoff game every year because, remember, the new playoff contract kicks in after the 2026 season. So there's 2 years where the Orange Bowl is definitely part of the playoff. After that, we don't know. So you got to jockey for position. And remember, all of these bowl organizing committees also are the ones that try to get the national title game to their city or to their metro area. So they're trying to get the best position to do that. If the players love them and want to go play in them, that's a good way to do it. So if you are those bowl games and you're suddenly allowed to pay the players, you're going to do it. And this will be the leak in the dam that brings on full-on revenue sharing. Because once you do that, the schools are going to have to share with the players. The schools are just going to start paying the players directly, which is going to happen anyway, but that would start it. So the commissioners who run the college football playoff have been fighting this and fighting this and fighting this. They're going to Washington to lobby Congress. They want an antitrust exemption. They want the athletes to be declared as not employees. Those are pipe dreams. They're not going to get any of that. But you could effectively close the door on that if you pass that law that says the bowls can pay the players. You could even go a step further if you're Florida. If you really just want to just drive the knives in, but get it over with quick, you just say schools in the state of Florida are allowed to pay players. It's going to happen at some point anyway. But they're trying to push it off and delay it as much as possible. You do that, every other state follows. All the lobbying in Washington won't help. And the thing about it is, it's just like NIL. Remember, NIL passed, they said all these terrible things will happen. Sports will have to be cut, blah, blah, blah. None of it's happened. The world kept spinning. People kept watching football. In fact, they watch it more than they did before. And people like the system better. Like, they keep watching it. The world didn't end. Plus, you're seeing a more equitable distribution of players. Alabama cannot stockpile the way it used to be able to. Georgia can't stockpile the way it used to be able to. Ohio State can't stockpile the way it used to be able to. So all of these things have been net positives. But they said it would end the sport. They're always wrong about this. That's one thing to remember. But if you want to get after those commissioners, if you want those commissioners to feel it, that you're angry, that you feel like the system they set up screwed Florida State, which it did. There's no denying that it did. And they set up a 14 playoff. Now, not all of the people who set it up are still in their jobs. There's only a couple of them. But they still kept it going for all these years. So that's how you get after them. That's how you get them. So we'll see if the Florida legislature has any guts on that front. Because if they do, if they really want to do something, they can knock it out this legislative session. But otherwise, they just want to talk. Probably just want to talk. But if they want to do something, that's the roadmap for it. Thank you so much for watching. Just a reminder, subscribe to this channel right here so you never miss an episode of Andy Staples On 3. And oh, by the way, watch all the other great videos on the On3 Sports YouTube channel.